I'm David Beale. I have written 3 children's books, The Parent Agency, The Person Controller, and my World Book Day book, The Boy Who Could Do What He Liked.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Mears.
My name's Nick Sharratt and I am a children's author and illustrator.
I am Kerry Bennell, the author of Harper and the Sea of Secrets and the Harper series.
And I'm Laura Ellen Anderson and I am the illustrator of the Harper series.
Hi, my name's Cressida Cowell and I'm the author and the illustrator of the How to Train Your Dragon books.
I'm Stephen Butler. I'm the author of The Diary of Dennis the Menace and The Wrong Pong, and I'm the host for World Book Day 2016.
My most recent book is called The Boy Who Could Do What He Liked. It's a very short book. It's only, 40 pages long or something. It's about a boy called Alfie who has a very, very strict routine that he follows every day. He has a homework routine and a breakfast routine and a tea routine and a cleaning his teeth routine. And then one day, his regular babysitter can't make it. He has a very, very old babysitter. And she just says, when he wants to do the routine, they'll just do what you like. And then he doesn't know what to do. So he says, all right, I'll do what I like. And then he can really do what he likes. He can do all sorts of magical things.
My latest book is a special World Book Day version of Norm, which I've just caught. I've gone off-piste a little bit. Normally I call my Norm books The World of Norm May Contain Nuts, The World of Norm Must Be Washed Separately, The World of Norm May Need Rebooting. I thought, as this is kind of a taster for the whole series, I decided to call it just Welcome to the World of Norm, because that's what it is.
My most recent book is probably Shark in the Park on a Windy Day. It's one in a series about a boy called Timothy Pope and his dad and the adventures they get up to at the park. And you should read it because it's a funny book and it's also hopefully got a few surprises in it too.
Well, our World Book Day book, which is Harper and the Sea of Secrets, is about Harper, who is this girl who has an amazing, rare musical gift, doesn't she? She can play any instrument she touches without having to learn it. She can play everything. There's a big concert happening and all of the musicians' instruments get stolen, and it's down to Harper and her friends and the cat and the wolf to solve the mystery and find out why the instruments are disappearing.
My most recent book is How to Fight a Dragon's Fury, which is the last book in a 12-book story arc, so it's pretty exciting. Basically, in this book, we discover whether or not Hiccup can save the dragons. The dragons are trying to destroy the humans, and the humans are trying to destroy the dragons, and it's a bit of a disaster situation, and Hiccup, on his own, of course with the help of Toothless, and his friends Fishlegs and Kamikaze, has to try and save the dragons.
My most recent book that's out is the latest Diary of Dennis the Menace, in which Dennis is sent to boarding school. It's a bit of an evil plot from his teachers that ends up with him being sent away to this very, very stern, very strict boarding school, which of course he manages to completely turn to his whim and make a menacing wonderland out of it.
Well, my first book, which is called Parent Agency, my son Ezra was talking to me. He was 8 at the time, and he asked me a question about Harry Potter. He said, why doesn't Harry Potter run away from the Dursleys, the horrible Muggle family that he has to live with when he's not at Hogwarts, and go and find some better parents? And I said, I'm not sure, but it's given me an idea. And the idea was a world in which children could just choose their own parents, and that was the Parent Agency.
So the initial inspiration for the World of Norm was very much my own family circumstances. It is not to say that it is entirely fictional. 99% of it's fictional. It's not a documentary. So what I would say 1% of it is based on us. The other 99% is completely made up.
I get my inspiration from remembering the things that I enjoyed when I was a boy. And also I get lots of ideas when I go into schools or libraries or do book events, and I talk to children and I pick up what they're interested in and what amuses them.
I always loved having books read to me as a child, and I kind of collected all of the different elements of my favourite books in my heart. So I have a library of different ideas that I can rely on that kind of echoes through into my work. And then just, being a mum, leading a busy life, that constantly throws up different ideas for things. Interestingly, actually, Laura looks quite similar to Harper.
Yes, I tend to turn the characters into me because I kind of just want to be them, really. really, but I'm also really inspired by music, and I will set aside different soundtracks to listen to while I'm illustrating different books. So with Harper and Sea of Secrets, for example, would be very magical soundtracks like Edward Scissorhands and Danny Elfman music, and
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
beautiful music and classical music too. So it goes very well with the subject of playing all of the different instruments. So yeah.
The inspiration for my books are actually from my childhood. So every year from when I was a baby, we would be taken to this uninhabited island off the west coast of Scotland and dropped off there by a local boatman and picked up again 2 weeks later. And this was an extraordinary experience for a kid. And this island was so small that when you stood on the top of it, you could see sea all around you. And it was wild. I mean, if you've been to the west coast of Scotland, wild and windy and incredibly exciting for a kid. But it was also the first place the Vikings came to when they invaded Great Britain. It was the last place they left. So there were all these little ruined houses all over the island where real Vikings would once have lived. So I used to play in the houses and imagine, what if I was a Viking? And what if dragons really existed, like Vikings thought they did?
I think, I was with Kathy Cassidy yesterday, and she has a brilliant bit in her event where she talks about the fact that authors are magpies and we just pick things out of everything we see. So always kind of be cautious around authors because we're always listening.
I read some slightly obscure books now, I guess, called the Billy Bunter books. I was a big fan of them. They were written by a guy called Frank Richards, and they were not written when I was a kid, because I'm not that old. They were written in the 20s and 30s, but my mum, who collected children's books, gave me lots of those, so I read all the Billy Bunter books. I also read Just William and Roald Dahl and everything that was around.
Enid Blyton, Famous Five, Secret Seven, all that stuff. So The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, Charlotte's Web, made me cry. And also I used to read annuals and comics. I would read the latest football annual, I would read books about birds, I would read the latest Blue Peter annual, I would just read absolutely anything.
When I was younger, my favourite books were Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That was one of my all-time favourites. I had a picture book that I was a little bit older for, but I loved it, called The Giant Jam Sandwich, which was also about food, funnily enough, which is a big favourite theme of mine. Beautiful illustrations and a very funny rhyming text. And I also had a book of poems called Spike Milligan's Silly Verse for Kids, which is so funny, and I still read it even now and laugh.
Well, I loved Alice in Wonderland. I thought I was Alice for many years, and still sometimes I'm going around in a confusion. I'm like, well, it's because I'm actually, in my head, I'm in Wonderland. Peter Pan, Mary Poppins, The Magical Faraway Tree, anything with a magical element I loved.
I love magical books too, but I was a huge fan of the Worst Witch series by Jill Murphy. Absolutely adored the illustrations. I was continually dressing up as the characters. Again, when I put my hair in plaits, I can become Mildred Hubble. A huge fan of the Roald Dahl series with beautiful illustrations by Quentin Blake, particularly The Witches, The Magic Finger.
It's so tricky to say which were my favourite authors as a kid and favourite books, because I loved so many different books. I read a lot of fantasy books, so I loved Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. I loved Diana Wynne Jones, who wrote wonderful books like The Ogre Downstairs. I love Ursula Le Guin, who wrote Wizard of Earthsea and all those amazing fantasy books. But I also loved Adventure, Treasure Island, all those kind of things. And then I also loved Enid Blyton, and so I had I read a lot of books as a kid, and they were all so inspiring for what I do now.
When I was little, I was a huge fan of Roald Dahl. I was part of the Roald Dahl generation, really, so obviously that was massive. I was a massive fan of the Robin Jarvis books when I was little. He wrote the Deptford Mice trilogy and the Deptford trilogy and the Whitby Witches, and just he's a brilliant, very violent writer. So I loved it. It really appealed. I have a very violent sense of humour, so I loved that they were a bit gross and scary, but intriguing and lovely as well.
My advice for any children who want to write is read as much as you can, and then when you come to write, try and not worry about copying any of that stuff. Just try and find your own voice. Think about your own experience and try and write whatever ideas you get from your own experience.
I would say, and you'll hear this advice time and time again, that's because it's true, is read and read and read and read and read. Devour as much fiction, non-fiction, comics, graphic novels, anything you can possibly lay your hands on, read. And you'll get a feel for what kind of stuff you want to possibly have a go at writing. And at the end of the day, you've just got to give it a go.
Something I did when I was younger is I used to enter competitions. So if ever I saw a competition on a cereal packet or on the television or anywhere, a drawing competition, I would enter it and I'd do my best. And sometimes I even was a runner-up or a prize winner. And that was really good for boosting my confidence and making me take my drawing seriously.
My advice to any aspiring authors would be to write about the thing that you love. It doesn't have to be the thing that you know, but it has to be something you're really passionate about, and to make the characters believable, but have lots of quirky and interesting things happening to them.
Just have fun, that's the main thing, you know, don't be too hard on yourself, that's the important thing.
My advice for anybody who wants to be an author themselves one day is firstly to think that you can do it. And I say that because when I was a kid, I read masses and I wrote. I was always making up stories, not whole books, by the way, not books like you see in bookshops, because children sometimes get discouraged and they think that they ought to be writing a whole big book like you find in a bookshop. Don't think that just because you're writing short stories or that your handwriting isn't that good, at this stage means that you're not going to be a writer, because you could be. It's all about your ideas and it's about practicing. So I say practice and read masses, because it gives you a feel for the way that different stories can be told.
Just keep writing. There are so many unfinished manuscripts on shelves all over the world, and really and truly the only difference, I mean obviously you have to have, so hopefully you've got some writing talent, but there are plenty of talented writers that are never published because it's just the talent of finishing. So my biggest piece of advice is just finish, and even if it's a bad first draft, it's a lot easier to make a bad first draft into a great second draft once you've finished.
I think I'd like to be Winnie the Pooh. I'd certainly like to be one of the characters from Winnie the Pooh. So I'm kind of Tigger-like when I'm on stage, but then the moment I come off stage, I'm more of a Pooh.
I would quite like to be a character called Biscuits, who's a very nice boy that I actually draw in Jacqueline Wilson's books. He's very friendly, he's got a good sense of humour, and he's a fantastic baker and cake maker, and I rather like biscuits and cakes myself, so I'd be Biscuits.
Well, as I was saying before, I do sometimes think that I am Alice, but I would also like to be Tiger Lily from Peter Pan. I'd like to go around with feathers in my hair and just be I think she's very cool and sort of slightly exotic, so I'd like to be her.
I think probably Pippi Longstocking, because she's redoubtable. She's so strong that she can lift a horse over her head. She was very, very rich. She had bags of money, no visible parents. And I think, oh yes, and she had the cheek of several Peter Pans. Yeah, so Pippi Longstocking.
Oh, if I could be one character, I'd probably someone like Willy Wonka or the Mad Hatter or something. Yeah, or Peter Pan maybe, something exciting.
Read whatever you get your hands on, a World Book Day book, or if not that, it's totally fine to read comics, it's totally fine to read things on the internet, it's totally fine to just read whatever, because as long as you're storytelling, as long as you're hearing stories and listening to stories, then your imagination is being fired up, and that's what I'm interested in.
It's lovely to stay with things that you're familiar with and read things. Everybody loves a series. Who doesn't love a series? I write a series. Sometimes it's nice to think outside the box and to maybe go for something that you wouldn't normally go for.
Why don't you read a picture book to a younger child and share the storytelling and see how that is? It's a lovely experience to do, and you might actually get more out of the picture book than you realised.
just to enjoy it really. I mean, it's so exciting. We had nothing like this when I was little at school. You never got given a token that you could exchange for a book. So there's a fabulous range of books. Find the one that suits you best, maybe our one, or maybe a different one.
That's an idea.
Read lots of books and try lots of different kinds of books. Because some people think, oh, well, I didn't like this book, that must mean that I'm not a reader. It doesn't mean that. It means that you haven't found the right book for you yet. Books are so wonderful. It's just a question of you finding the right book for you. You know, it may take trying different types of books to find the book that you really loved.
When I was, I don't know, 7 or 8, I was terrible. I mean, so behind the rest of my class. And it's very funny reading all my school reports because my mum's kept them all, and all of them are like, he's really behind. And so my biggest advice is that it doesn't matter that you're behind, it's just that you're reading. So even if it's, you know, actually really interestingly, I had a tweet today, quite an aggressive tweet, that said, if you want children to read your books, you need to put the age range on them. And I came back straight away and I was like, I absolutely despise age ranges on books because I think they pigeonhole reading taste. And I think there is nothing wrong with, you know, a 9-year-old reading a book that would otherwise be labelled as a book for a 5-year-old. I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. So just read what you enjoy. That's definitely my piece of advice.